All right, time to talk about the deadbolt door lock mechanism. The first thing I'm going to do is a hand sketch. This is what I came up with when I was thinking about this a while ago. That was actually before I thought about making this into a challenge. So there would be a little gear, I thought, that connects to the knob on the outside of the door, and that's what rotates. And the deadbolt, that would have teeth to mesh with that gear. This sort of thing is called a rack and pinion arrangement. That is something that can be found in applications from like Lego toys to your car's steering mechanism, and in more exotic application, it's like used to pull up trains on the side of steep mountains. Pinion is just another word for a gear. Pinions are usually the smaller gears and arrangements when a small gear drives a larger gear. So for the challenge, the next requirement was not just to move this right and left, in and out, but to make it impossible to push that bolt back into the door from the outside, something that an intruder might try to do. And that was already where I ran out of ideas. I thought maybe a little hook, some kind of a snapper that would click in place when the bolt is all the way out. That could do the job, and it probably would. But now the problem is how to get that hook back to unhook and let me turn the knob the other way to unlock the door. Remember, the other requirement was to only use the rotation of the knob to do everything. And since I can think better when I make CAD models, I drew this whole thing up in CAD, and I added a snapping hook and stared at this for a while, and I was playing with it. And then I gave up. I had no idea how this could be done with a few simple parts. So I took such a unit out from a door and had a close look. Here's how it operates. I'm using a screwdriver in the place of the knob because that knob had to come off and I removed everything from the door. And the way it looks, there is a little rotating lever that is attached to two arms, and they move the deadbolt when the knob is turned. And clearly when I'm trying to push the bolt in from the outside, I can't do it. And it looks like that little pin has something to do with that. To make sense of all this, I made another CAD model, this time of the actual real deadbolt unit. At first glance, it looks like my model gets it all right. It looks and moves just like the real thing. But when I look closer at that little pin, it becomes clear that the CAD model isn't behaving like the real thing at all. That pin is passing right through material here and here. That is not really what a real thing would do. So I'm going to undo some of my assembly relations here in the CAD model, and I'm going to move the parts just around with my mouse pointer to show what they would do in reality. So here we go in slow-mo. As I start turning my silver rotating lever, it works on the pin in such a way that the pin at first gets only lifted up vertically. That way it can climb out of that deep slot. The lever now transfers it all the way to the other side, and there it hits that blue material here again, causing the pin to now first move horizontally only until it hits the edge and the deep slot there, and it just plunges down into that. Now imagine what would happen if somebody was trying to push the bolt inwards. That red lever, the push rod, would push that pin hard against the vertical wall, and lacking the upwards motion from the silver rotating lever, the orange push rod would have no chance of getting it out of the slot. Mission accomplished. To get it out, you absolutely need the upwards facing force component from the rotating lever. Amazing, isn't it? It just can't get out of there unless the knob or the key or whatever turns that lever. Well, actually, this isn't the true picture. There's a tiny detail here that I haven't talked about. And I actually made a mistake in my CAD model when I didn't include that. Can you spot that? Here it is. Can you see that the angle on the right side of that deep slot here is not 90 degrees? That edge is leaning over ever so slightly, tiny bit to the left. Here's how it looks after I include it in the CAD. Here's what happens when that edge is not leaning. If somebody pushes against the bolt and thus the pin from the outside, that's represented by the yellow vector, the vertical edge pushes back, but horizontally, that's the black arrow. That will cause the little red arrow force vector that is pointing upwards. And if the pushing is hard enough, that tiny force could get big enough to lift the pin up. Now compare that to what happens when the edge is leaning and perpendicular to the push rod. Nothing. Action and reaction are now perfectly opposed by 180 degrees, and there's no upwards motion possible. There just isn't any force to do that. And in fact, if the edge is angled even more, and when you look at the real thing, you can see that it really is angled more than that, a force is generated in that case that pushes the pin more downwards into the slot. Can you see it? And there you have it. The devil is in the detail. I'm going to leave you with an additional riddle at the end. Did you notice that the tiny pin is actually thicker in the middle compared to its ends? That is not an accident. Do you know why they would make it like that? If you think you know this, shoot me an email.